Hey everyone, and happy new year. It's me, Jen, joining you on Stars Unscripted. We're really looking forward to a great year full of some great content. We're going to have some exciting guests on. I wanted to start this episode before we jump in with Nate and Mick and do a little bit of a ring one out for VBID. For those of you who do not know, the VBID program has been discontinued. And so as we move into bid cycle for 2026, yes, it's here already. A lot of people have been coming to me and asking me, what are we supposed to do? We had a whole strategy around VBID. Why would CMS do this to us? Also, one, CMS doesn't do anything to us. It's how you respond, for good or for bad. Although it does feel like the last couple of years it's been a lot. But in any other news, I just wanted to kind of ring one out for VBID. It was a fun run. As you're looking for strategies and things to do in wake of VBID being gone. This year, I'll be, especially in bid season, having some guests on to talk about, how to approach the bid. But in lieu of advance notice being dropped last Friday, I wanted to bring on some guests with me to talk about that today. So I hope you enjoy, and thanks for listening.
Have you ever wondered, why does it work that way? Or thought, how can we thrive with Medicare Advantage under these conditions? You're not alone. Jen has wondered all those things and more. Every month, join Jenn Kerfoot and a motley crew of friends as they bring you candid conversations with industry pros, break down important updates, and share insider tips to boost star ratings. Whether you've been around since before Medicare had the advantage or are just starting out, there's always something new to learn. Welcome to Stars Unscripted.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us for another episode of Stars Unscripted. I'm your host, Jenn Kerfoot. I'm joined with two of my favorite people, Nate and Mick, on a Friday afternoon where the three of us are running low on the energy, probably because we spent the weekend or maybe all of Monday reading a lot of things that came out. We're coming back after a nice holiday hiatus where I hope you, our listeners, also got to relax and unwind because God knows 2024 was a hell of a year. And coming fresh off the press of last Friday, we have advance notice, which had a whole heck of a lot of stuff that was both interesting, not interesting, and also just meh. Before we dive in, I want to ask our listeners, why is it that we get a table of contents in advance notice, but I can't get a table of contents in anything else? Asking for a friend. But thank you so much, Nate and Mick, for joining us. For those of you listeners who don't know who they are, Nate, Mick, do you mind introducing yourselves quickly?
Go ahead, Nate.
Sure. Nate Lucena. I'm the Strategy and Analytics Officer at Wallace Consulting, or RWC, where we work with plans across the country on quality performance improvement.
And I'm Mick Twomey, CEO of Hyperlift. We have the luxury of getting to work with Nate in RWC quite a bit. Hyperlift is a Stars analytics firm, and we help organizations kind of better understand, optimize, improve overall star ratings, and get to join folks like Jen on podcasts like this.
And we also appreciate that Hyperlift also is the sponsor of this podcast. Had to plug the sponsor.
There you go.
All right, so let's jump in. So it's interesting to see that 2024 was really, I think, in my opinion, the year of the litigator, the actuary, and maybe the lobbyist, yet to be seen. But what was really interesting is coming after 2024 and a host of lawsuits, with multiple lawsuits being kind of centralized around those call center measures. When advance notice came out last Friday on January the 10th, I was really surprised to see that CMS is soliciting feedback. I love that, soliciting feedback on the potential retirement of measures that primarily focus on operational performance or administrative processes such as NPF price accuracy, complaints about the health and drug plan, call center, foreign language, interpreter TTY availability, plans making timely decisions about appeals, reviewing appeal decisions, MTM, program completion rate for CMR, care for older adults, medication review, and care for older adults functional status assessment. Wow. Nate, Mick, what are your first reactions to that?
Magoof, I guess. I think Okay, there's, I think, so many things to talk about. So it's interesting to me. I don't know that this plays into the strategy at all, but basically all of these measures are ones that are not in the HEI. Many of them are in kind of the operational domain, which this week in our client council, Jessica Acefa astutely pointed out is the highest performing domain across the industry on average. This is sort of in line, I think. If you read this within the context of all the other measures they're proposing to add or putting under consideration or pushing into the display page, including some of the things that they talked about pushing into the Haas survey, you can really start to see where they're orienting around outcome measures and moving away from process. I think that makes sense to me just with kind of the proposals we've gotten over the past few years, but it certainly would rock the star ratings to remove all of those measures. And oddly enough, those are the measures, a lot of them at least, which feel mostly within the control of the health plan. We can talk a little bit more later, maybe about, the other reasons to remove measures, which is that the cut points or the performance distribution is so narrow that it no longer is truly distinguishing between good and bad performance caps. But right now we're talking about these. So, and I know, Mick, you've already taken a look at kind of what this might do to the industry if these measures were removed, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting when you look at what kind of an impact it has just from a score standpoint. If let's take away some of the ones that could come out maybe earlier. MPF, you take away the appeals measures, you take away the call center measures. You do that, if you apply that to STARS 2025, 29 contracts who had gotten QBP wouldn't get QBP anymore, but there are 5 contracts out there that would have been propelled into 4+ star status. When you actually take out all the ones that they were talking about, so you add in MTM, SNP, complaints, 40 plans drop out of QBP and only 2 jump back in. And then, what's coming, if you take away reward factor at the same time, 62 contracts with all of this end up losing QBP. And, what I think is kind of interesting on all of this, you look back, STARS 2025, with the measure weights before they changed, the QI 5-weight measures, it was about 5 points if you took the Part C QI from a 4 to a 5, a 3 to a 4, whatever. It was a big deal. We've been talking about this a lot, that when after the MX weight change, now it's 6.5 points, almost 7 points. And so now that was like propelling people into reward factor in a lot of cases. But that's a big deal. But if you take out all of these measures, then you think about, because the QI is still going to be 5-weight, it's just putting more and more emphasis on the importance of excelling on these QI measures, because they're going to have a drastic impact on your overall score.
Yeah, I definitely agree with what both you all said. I think I like to think of this as like a be careful for what you wish for, because I know that especially around kind of the end of last year and the lawsuits, a lot of speculation was on, okay, are we going to get rid of TTY in foreign language? And there was a lot of kind of consternation because some plans were like, yes, get rid of it. And some were like, no, we need that. We get a 5 on that consistently. And I will say, back when I was at a plan, a good friend of mine was like, these are measures you never fail. When they're calling you, who they are when they do call you, because no one's like, I'm calling on behalf of my dad and has this weird medication no one's ever heard of, and will he hit catastrophic? Like, no one's asking those questions at CMS. But now I'm thinking like, well, okay, it's not only that we got rid of potentially that one measure that gave a lot of consternation to the industry, but it's a lot of measures that plans specifically have a lot of control over, to your point, Nate. So when I was reading this for the first time, I'm thinking, one, obviously there's a reason CMS doesn't do anything for their own health. These measures existed at one point for a reason. Does CMS still want to know about these things? Was my first question. I'm like, and where are they going to want to know about these things? And like, is this moved to like a plan audit kind of structure? Is this like that plan readiness checklist? I see you shaking your head, Nate. So where do
For
you think they're
sure.
going?
I mean, there's lots of places they can stick it where they're still essential for plan operations, right? And plans are still held accountable for these things. Um, the
Yeah.
two that you named are great places.
I mean, appeals, like it's kind of a big deal, especially
Right.
around all this prior authorization, kind of in the news. Like appeals still be important, but where are they going?
Yeah.
Maybe where VBIT is going, hopefully not. Um,
Right.
that was a little
Well,
on
and
the
the
nose.
HRA, right? Thinking about, okay, well, what if the HRA isn't the star measure anymore? Well, it's embedded in
Yeah,
every part of the organization. It's part of the model of care. Like it's
exactly.
still required. So these are still things that health plans are going to have to focus on and report on somewhere.
Exactly. We just decouple that from kind of this performance pay structure, which is star ratings.
Yeah,
Um,
it's. Can
in
I say one
general.
more thing though?
Yes.
So, I think, and we'll save this for another podcast, I believe, but I think there are some hefty arguments to be made about whether or not the appeals measures are within the control of a health plan. I think there are a lot of health plans that would say, hey, it should be well within our control, and it should hinge on whether or not we are following the rules and making the best decisions for members with the gold standard of clinical guidance. And I think there are a lot of health plans who have a lot of evidence that maybe that is really not how that is getting administered when things go to the IRE. So more on that to come, but it's a discussion we got to have.
I just want to tell everyone that's listening that I have never liked Maximus. I have never liked this process, and I dislike it a whole heck of a lot. So I'll be excited to talk about that, obviously, on another
Yes,
podcast.
we got a lot to
But
say.
I know that, Mick, that you've done a lot of modeling and a lot of work with Stars Munder as it pertains to Health Equity Index. I think a lot of different questions that have come to me recently, specifically, actually, is one, reminding all our listeners that CAI and HEI, while they both have 3 letters, are 2 different things. Now, what you might be hearing is that some plans will be hit by the double whammy, which is that they do not qualify for HEI and they also do not benefit anything with CAI. So Nate, do you mind like giving the listeners just really quick, especially for people that are new to this world, the difference between those 2 things?
Oh God. Okay. Okay. So
I put it on the spot. Sorry, folks.
Okay, the CAI, the Categorical Adjustment Index, was meant to be a temporary solution. Angelo, the policy analyst on our team, likes to remind us of that a lot. And it was really in response to a lot of the comments that those of us who were at the health plans working with a lot of DSNP members were making at the time, which is, hey, we're providing care to a really high density of very sick members who have a lot of social needs. And that makes it much harder for us to reach the same level of performance. So CMS, could you take that into account, right? Much like you're already doing when you case mix a CAPS measure. I guess we can leave that over there. It's not a perfect system either. And so CMS response to that was to do many analyses, I think with RAND, I can't remember actually who did it at this point, and come up with a model where they look only industry-wide at the difference within a contract with members who are LISDE versus the members who are not. And without getting into too much detail, what they do is they come up with a system where they will adjust your performance up or down. This is not upside only. Plans that are sort of in the bottom in terms of their percentages of these members with these social risk factors get adjusted downward. And if you're on the bubble, I've seen it many times that a plan doesn't quite get to the level of rounding up to a 4 because of the tenths or hundredths of a point that they get deducted due to the categorical adjustment index. So that's been around for a while. And now the Health Equity Index comes into play. The Health Equity Index is much more of a reward factor, right? It is, in and of itself, it is upside only, although we can talk about the removal of the reward factor as it exists today not being upside only because it's not a replaceable thing with the HEI. But that really takes into account how are you performing in your members with these social risk factors relative to your peers who are also delivering care to those members with social risk factors. And that's how you kind of come up with where you're rewarded.
As long as you have the right percentage of people in your
Yeah.
population. I mean,
Ooh, yeah,
that's one of the struggles, I think. You know, there is a, STARS leader that all of us know really well, and I, highly respected, who, in their plan, they have, dozens of thousands of SRF population, but just under that percentage. So they're not going to qualify this. They've been getting reward factor, but, and they've got very high scores, frankly, on the SRF population, but they're going to get zero. And so, I'm not, I don't know really what I'm not saying here right now, but I guess what I am saying, we've seen a change. We've seen a change here in level of litigiousness, right? And I think that there are some cases that can be made, or at least challenge, what are we trying to achieve? Because this group is actually positively impacting a whole lot more people in the SRF population than some of the other ones that are getting a bonus for it. So
yeah, I mean, you think about these percentages that just came out in the last simulation. It's just under 22, right?
Yeah.
I think 21 point something.
Yeah.
That means that a plan that's at 20, so 1 in 5 of their members has a social risk factor, is eligible for nothing, regardless of if they're knocking it out of the park, like this mutual client that Mick is talking about that we both work with.
Yeah, and if that plan has 100,000 members, so 20,000 of them are this other plan has 5,000 members, therefore 1,000, to me, there is something broken there in terms of what are we trying to achieve here?
Yeah. What are we trying to achieve? I think in general, this is just, I think, in small part of a bigger discussion, is the star rating system and also the measurement system fair equally to small plans, to large plans across the board? And that isn't just for HEI. That's also, as Nate and I have alluded, across some other things, like caps, like the appeals measure in general. I think that there's a larger discussion going on, especially in our industry right now, which is fitting considering today the next set of drugs was released under the Inflation Reduction Act. Some would argue that the Inflation Reduction Act, specifically the Part D redesign, penalizes safety net health plans and rewards large health plans that may or may not own a PBM. So I think this is a discussion that's going around industry-wide about policy that's being directed to plans is not equitably designed, even though it's in the name of health equity for its members. And so if we do trickle down economics, the math doesn't math. And I think it's really problematic. And Nate and Mick, I'd be curious to hear what you're hearing with your feet on the street. I'm hearing from different clients of ours and just friends across the industry. They're like, Jen, I cannot make a strategic plan to save my life. Be it lawsuits, be it changes. I know we keep alluding to something else we'll talk about at another podcast, but if you throw the book out, what am I supposed to plan for? And so, I had a really haphazard answer, especially while plans are going into bid season. And last year was a hellacious bid season, if y'all do recall. That, what can we do? And I'm like, you just have to be good at everything. It used to be, especially for example, with hybrid measures. I'm like, I love me some hybrid. I know that 411 sample. But now with ECDS, it's you have to just be an all around decathlon player versus just being good at one sport. And, it's hard for a reason, but I think it's worth a conversation. I think in a larger scale that potentially we've lost the plot. Health insurance got a health insurance. And have we tacked on too many things and lost the plot completely? Curious to hear your thoughts.
Well, I mean, I think it's interesting just the game keeps changing, right? Selfishly, we celebrate when CMS changes the rules, every other day because, it makes the world complicated. And as long as we can figure it out and, but that's selfishly, when you look at what, the plan out there is trying to do, like you're saying, creating a long-term strategic plan here, but then all of a sudden, 5 of these measures are about to be gone, or mid-year, we're changing the cut points. I know people who made the decision to get out of Medicare Advantage last year, And then they announced this, and the world would have been different. They would have made it a different decision. So, I mean, just the world is in flux right now on the star side, and trying to put these plans together, manage the strategic focus. It's a challenging situation right now.
What would you say, Nate? Like when I know you do a lot of work around strategy and going outside of the normal like PDSA model of where we're like, we're sit and we're going to analyze. Those who know me know I'm like, you have a bad network. I don't need to spend a bunch of money with McKinsey and Deloitte to tell you have a bad network. You have a bad, like when you know it. And I think that like one of the reasons I've always appreciated working with you, Nate, and I know your clients do as well, is because you're able to give them really tactical advice on not only like the moment they're in, but as it pertains to their like larger 3-5 year roadmap, especially for plans that are like, publicly traded or even like, private owned plans, I think. So how do you think that you're approaching and advising your clients around kind of just this massive flux that's occurring?
Well, I instill some confidence in them that we will keep them abreast on our professional opinion of how this will all shake out.
Yes.
But what I try to reinforce is the shiny things are always going to be coming at you, and don't take your eye off of your solid fundamentals. Because when you take your eye off of those things, and by taking your eye off, when I talk about fundamentals, I don't mean that you stop innovating, right? That's not what I mean by shiny things. You keep innovating on kind of your bread and butter so that you're better than anybody else at that, and you're so rock solid that you're actually resilient to a little bit of ambiguity, or maybe even a lot of ambiguity within the system. So the Health Equity Index reward is a great example of that. We have all spent the last 2 years drowning, right, in health equity data, getting prepared for it, building internal reporting to make sure that we can track our SRF members over time and when we put new initiatives into place. To me, that feels like a new fundamental, regardless of whether you're getting rewarded on it, right? The strategies that you put into place and the things you learned about your members by doing that work, those are still really valuable, and those are still things that you should focus on. Because, go back to my previous example, let's say you're not eligible because you fall below 21%, but you're still at 20. Let's say you do have large disparities. That's 1 in 5 of your members that's dragging down your rate. Chances are, if you weren't focusing on them before the HEI came along, that was your performance problem anyway. So keep looking at that, right? Make sure that you understand your members, the fundamental aspects of delivering care, and you will then be resilient to a lot of these changes that are coming your way. Now, your product team might throw you a few curveballs, right? They might go out there and start randomly marketing or growing your service area in a way and not thinking about what the implications of that are. They probably are going to do that, and they probably just did it. But that's a thing that you're always going to have to deal with. So focusing on those fundamentals is key.
And I think, Nate, I actually agree with and appreciate what Nate was saying. I think he's got a skill set.
Yeah, I was like, do you guys usually not agree? Like, let's talk about that.
I was going to be more specific here. I agree. Like he does have the innate ability to not get, no pun intended, to not get caught up with the shiny things. Let's focus on the fundamentals. But Nate and I have been, we've done, like at conferences, talked about this. Whether you get the reward for HEI or not, this is still a good move. And it's a good move because it's a good thing, but it's also a good numbers move. If you've got a decent sized population on the SRF side, anything that you can do to improve access, to improve the care that they're getting, is going to bump up your scores. It's going to bump up. It's going to bump up your QI, make it a lot easier to achieve that. And if you think about what's the average HEI bonus, 11 points is one of the recent numbers that I saw, where reward factor was 26, 27, 28. And so that gap is much lower here. And so maybe you're not getting the reward, but with every QI bump, you jump up 6.5, 7 points. So 7 points versus 11, there's still a lot to be gained, and you're doing the right things.
Yep.
Thank you. Thank you for both saying that, because one of the things that I've heard multiple times in the past 6-8 months is like, well, they moved member experience from a 4 to a 2, so that investment we made in improving member experience is wasted. I'm like, but how?
Oh my
Like,
God.
it's not
Yeah, I
like everything can't be
mhm,
everything. I know you both have heard it too, but I'm like, each
yes.
move you make still is meaningful. Also, if you're sitting at that cusp that you're at 20 and you need to be at 21 for, individuals with SRFs, I would put money on it that there are members who are eligible for LIS who are not
Yeah,
enrolled in LIS. Like, HEI has two parts to it. One, do you have enough members to qualify? And then two, work the same measures that you've been working. And none of those ops measures that we're talking about are going away, are those
right.
measures. So keep working the measures. Don't stop working the measures just because you don't have enough members to qualify. And then look for areas that maybe in your case managers or in your brokers or really anybody that touches your membership, especially if you're doing what you should be doing already with the new HRA and screening members for that SNSE measure. If they said they're food insecure or have housing insecurity and they are not flagging as LIS in your system, a
Right.
good start would be maybe to screen them.
Get them through. Yeah, get them
Just a
started in
thought.
that process.
Sorry,
Yep,
rant
totally.
over. In general, I think that, end to end, there's a lot of different changes, especially with the new administration coming in on Monday. I think if I'm reading the tea leaves, so a couple different things that are like converging, I would say is like we have what is it, Dodge, which I think is
Hmm.
ironic if anyone bought any Dogecoin. But like the Department of Government Efficiency, if we're looking at
Efficiency.
that
Yes.
and we're listening to the confirmation hearings that are currently underway. I'm not going to make my comments on them. But if you
Hmm.
haven't watched them, you should watch them. They're pretty fun.
Yeah, we should watch them.
Is RFK, Dr. Oz, what do they want? They want consumer choice. They want member experience, actually, a lot of consumer choice. And they also want to get away from things that they have defined as unnecessary ticky tacky boxes. Well, we all agree on this call that it's important, like appeals be important. They want to
Hmm.
shift towards those patient and clinical centered measures. And so, my advice to a lot of folks is Haas be coming, and Haas be coming for you. It
Well,
is not
we
awesome.
yeah. And I think it was the advance notice last year when they
Mhm.
spent a long time on Hoth and the future
Mhm.
concepts that they might start pushing into that survey.
Mm.
Not because Haas is not quote unquote actionable in the way that we would think about it in terms
Mhm.
of a HEDIS measure.
Yeah.
And they said, right, we're putting it in there as a measure. There will be other things over here that are your actionable sort of data sources that you're going to be gathering all along the way,
Mhm.
like the SNSE measure. Get on board, get
Mhm.
on top of it. Come on, guys.
Jump on it.
Yeah. But pushing different things around social needs and follow up, mental health into HOT,
Mhm. Mm.
really broadening out the base of what's getting asked in that survey. That could really profoundly kind of change the makeup of it within STARS, patient reported outcome measures, all those
Mhm.
different things that are coming, right? We've had a heads up about that, so
They be coming.
they
Haas
be
be
coming.
coming.
They
Also,
be coming.
improving and maintaining mental and physical health times 3 weighted.
Hmm.
I'm so happy I'm not at a plan right now. Like, I don't know. We got fires in California. We got an
Uh-huh.
Arctic blast. It's about to be like negative, I think like 10 this weekend here in Denver. Like, no one's feeling good about their physical or mental health,
Right.
myself included.
Yes. Right. Yeah, we've been frozen in for 2 weeks here. I mean, it's a struggle. People are going through things. Particularly interesting to think about as the CAP
Hmm.
survey is impending. Right,
Mm.
like when there are a lot of things going on in the world, we've had a lot of clients coming to us asking us like, okay, well, what do you think this will do just to people's general feelings about their healthcare when they're responding?
Yeah.
A lot to think about there.
But anyways, I would like to thank you both for joining me on this Friday. I really appreciate you both. Looking forward to continuing the conversation as we see more developments. As always, if you're listening and you want to connect with Nate and Mick, we're going to put their LinkedIn links. Also, like, you can find them. They're everywhere. But thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye. Thanks.
Thank you.
As a Medicare Stars professional, you're on a mission to boost your plan's ratings. But complex data and endless metrics make it more than challenging. Enter Stars Monitor by Hyperlift, your guide to improved performance. Our dashboards pinpoint your most impactful opportunities. By focusing on what truly matters, you'll avoid the pitfall of missed targets and achieve the goal of steady improvement. Take the first step towards your Stars success story. Email results@hyperlift.com for a free demo. Stars Monitor by Hyperlift, providing speed to clarity.